We here at the Jimquisition take accuracy with the utmost seriousness. To that end, there have been a number of goofs that have occurred throughout the course of the show of late, and I hold my hands up to them, and I must redress that and address that and apologise. I won't be making the apology myself, of course, that would be far too unbecoming. But there is someone here who will take the blame for certain goofs. For example, on the last episode I said that Skyrim was a 3-year-old game. It is in fact a 5-year-old game. There was one episode, I can't remember exactly which one it was, where I said BioWare at one point when I was meant to have said Blizzard. There have been multiple mistakes in Fuck Konami News, where I mentioned the sales figures of the Metal Gear series, and all of these mistakes, they're just not acceptable. So here to take the blame and offer a full and frank apology from his own words, the man truly responsible. I got him out of prison by winning a competition to be a judge for a weekend. I give you my assistant, my intern, my head of fucking up, Chip. Take the stage and offer the people the apology they deserve. Shut up, Chip! It's all your fault, you big dick! Publishers want your money before a game is released. The rise and increasing influence of pre-order culture has made that perfectly apparent. These days, it's possible to find out about a game's pre-order bonuses before one even sees the game's announcement. The more games demand your money on blind trust, however, the less trustworthy they've become. Microtransactions have begun to sneak into so-called premium games. Day one patches are growing bigger and more important. Many high-profile titles launch with glaring bugs or shaky online connectivity, patches be damned. And while this is happening, games publishers have insidiously begun to undermine the one thing customers could use to find out about a game before launch: reviews. It's no secret that game reviews, as of this generation, have begun to publish closer and closer to release dates. Certain companies, like 2K Games and Activision, now commonly hand review copies over to critics either a day before launch or launch day itself. Ubisoft's done the same with certain titles, especially Assassin's Creed games, as we discussed in the very first independent Jimquisition, the Reviewbisoft problem. Earlier this year, Bethesda joined the ranks of publishers who refused to send out early review code, giving critics access to Doom a day before its release. Many were surprised to subsequently find out Doom was incredible, and Bethesda was not in fact trying to sneak a stinker into customers' hands before the truth was known. Seemingly encouraged by the success of Doom and using it as justification for future behaviour, Bethesda's confirmed it will, going forward, do the same for all its games. The policy has continued with Skyrim Special Edition and will be seen again with Dishonored 2. Bethesda's reason for Doom was the alleged importance of the game's online multiplayer and server population, but now the reasoning has switched to just wanting both critics and customers to all experience the game at the same time. Well, that sounds noble, doesn't it? Not very helpful to customers wanting to find out about games earlier, of course, and certainly not great for reviews themselves, since reviews always benefit from the extra time and convenient scheduling that advanced copies provide. So basically, it's really not helpful to anybody but Bethesda. To its credit, Bethesda does urge customers to withhold on pre-ordering games if they care about media opinions before buying, but nevertheless, one expects it will continue to indulge the pre-order culture that's thoroughly infested so-called AAA games, so it's a bit of a meaningless pantomime of decency. This is not the only way the narrative around a game's critical reception is being controlled by publishers. I recently found out that myself and a number of other critics are scrutinised by publishers as wild cards. From what I've been told via PR companies, those reviewers whose scores cannot be easily predicted, who don't toe the milquetoast line by offering generalised praise to every AAA game that comes along, make corporations nervous. This is a case I've been able to verify via my sources with Electronic Arts, who are loath to send me review copies anymore because I cannot be guaranteed to give high-profile titles like Battlefield 1 a positive review.
Ironic, since I'm getting so much shit from commenters right now for actually loving the fucking game.
From what I've learned, PR companies used to get several hundred review copies to hand to the many game critics and publications out there. In recent years, those copies have dwindled to maybe 100 for major AAA releases, as reviewer names get crossed off the distribution lists and the EAs of the world try to construct their preferred critical appraisal from the outlets they know are more likely to softball them. It's hardly surprising that EA in particular would be all about this. This is the same company that was caught red-handed, attempting to manipulate Battlefield 3's review scores by grilling outlets on their reviewers' dispositions and applying pressure to get the praise they wanted. That they decide to do away with wildcards such as myself altogether is not a shocker. It's also not like this is bad business sense. Game companies owe critics nothing, and if you thought you knew someone would tear your game apart, or even felt like there was just a risk of it, it could be seen as a perfectly savvy move to deny them access to your game until everybody else has got it. Personally, I'd call it a cowardly move, a move that lacks confidence in one's product and absolutely confirms that you're attempting to provide an unrepresentative, disproportionately glowing consensus through selective duplicity. But I do have to admit it also makes sense from a cold, calculating business perspective, which is of course the only perspective that ever really matters to corporations. There are plenty of other reasons for publishers to get skittish about early reviews too. Just look at how popular day one patches are now that online connectivity has allowed for games to be certified while a shit ton of stuff still needs fixing. Just look at Mafia 3, which didn't just need a day one patch but a several days later patch on PC. Just look at games like Arkham Knight that had no PC reviews and we all soon found out why. Then there are the high profile examples of games that were mauled after failing to live up to expectations, Aliens Colonial Marines and No Man's Sky being the most famous. Between a hungry desire to keep those pre-orders secured, the overwhelming prevalence of day one and day after patches, big budget games that release in variously broken stages, and titles with deliberately misleading advertising campaigns, it's hardly any wonder that this generation, perhaps the shittiest generation already in terms of shady business decisions and customer contempt, has seen major companies become less and less keen to arm honest writers and video makers with the tools they need to inform their audiences ahead of time. I dare say this is something we can expect to see grow in popularity as well. Doom certainly wasn't harmed by a lack of reviews or YouTube impression videos, and there are only gains to be had in keeping unpredictable critics away from games for as long as possible. And they absolutely have a right to do it. Many would argue they are right to do it, at least again from that purely business standpoint. Doesn't stop it being a spineless and slimy thing to do, and something I think deserves to be side-eyed. Maybe if the AAA game industry had spent the last several years actually fostering some faith and doing decent things, it wouldn't be such a sleazy situation, but they haven't really done that, have they? On the contrary, most of these publishers have spent the last several years just being bigger and bigger cupheads. As an alleged wildcard, now confirmed to be blacklisted or at least greylisted by multiple publishers, I'm not too personally fussed, at least not when it comes to my own business. Companies like Bethesda and 2K holding their games back only helps me, since I buy almost every game I review at launch anyway, so the established outlets are barely getting a jump on me now. Plus, being funded on Patreon and writing for a large established audience that comes to the Jimquisition for opinions regardless of their post date means that I both have the budget to buy whatever games I review and don't ever have to worry about getting them up alongside the Polygons and IGNs of the world, where traffic impressions matter more and people want their reviews as timely as possible. If anything, I take the likes of EA and Square Enix, and especially fucking Konami trying to keep games out of my hands, to be a mark of bloody honour, a sign I'm doing something right. Hell, I'd be insulted if EA were giving me early copies now that I know they only want them to go to predictable critics who'll dance to their tune. As for the average game buying customer, as ever, I would recommend eschewing pre-ordering games unless they're genuinely limited products that would prove hard to buy otherwise. I can't and won't tell you how to spend your money, but I'd suggest not playing into that shit, especially given how desperate these companies have gotten for money up front while doing what they can to eliminate guarantees that what you're paying for is a product worth buying in the first place. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go play Owlboy. It may not be AAA, but D-Pad Studios got that game to critics well ahead of launch day, and also it's pretty damn good. At the risk of breaking embargo anyway, saying that last bit. Wildcard, bitches! There are many who will no doubt greet the situation with applause, celebration, that the game reviewers and critics they don't like might potentially get fucked over in some way. In fact, there are a number of commenters on the Jimquisition.com, let's just call them fanny flaps, who are currently congratulating EA, siding with EA in my particular case, glad to see me punished for my clickbait reviews, because obviously an ad-free site is really desperate for clicks. But it needs to be stressed, this does only benefit publishers. the EAs, the Ubisofts, the Bethesdas, all those publishers out there. It doesn't benefit anyone else. Bethesda's reasoning for doing this was weak beyond measure, trying to present it desperately as something that benefits everyone when it benefits only Bethesda. It only helps companies that no one gets any pre-look at their games. In fact, the only pre-look ever being those glowing previews where everyone has to be cautiously optimistic. This affects not just, websites you might not like Polygon or whatever, or myself. This affects your favourite YouTubers who have only recently managed to be considered credible enough to start getting treated with a modicum of respect by publishers. This affects those customers out there who actually do care about game reviews. There are quite a few out there. This affects a lot of people and only benefits, again, one particular entity. The pricks at the top who have alone come up with all the microtransactions, the pre-order bullshit, the buggy games at launch, all that bullshit that pisses you off, that have you coming to watch this show. They're the ones who are making off like bandits out of this. So I wouldn't be celebrating it, even if I hated me, right? I wouldn't be celebrating this. But then again, I can see further than my own nose, all right? I mean, I might not be able to look down and see my own penis, but I can look further than my own nose. It's not too true about the penis thing. I have pulleys and mirrors, so fuck you. And also thank God for me. Pretty decent penis.